Hello and welcome to the St Mary's College podcast. We talk about anything and everything.
On today's show we have a very special guest, our Vice President of St Mary's, Miss Thomas. Miss Thomas is our current Vice Principal and Maths teacher at the college, who will be retiring this July to enjoy life after St Mary's. We are delighted to be interviewing Miss Thomas today, as she is not only a long-standing staff member at the college, but also former pupil at the school. Mrs. Thomas is St Mary's through and through, and we are sad to see her go, but excited to have this opportunity to sit down with her and find out more about her time here, both as a pupil and a teacher.
First of all, we want to look back to your time as a pupil at St Mary's.
Tell us about your earliest memories of the school as a student. Do you remember your first day?
I can remember my first day vividly because I didn't know anybody when I arrived here. And it wasn't like now, so we hadn't had induction day or taster day. And the only time I'd been here was when I was interviewed because I came to the sixth form. And the first pupil I met when I arrived in the morning was a boy called Sean, and he showed me around the school. And then bizarrely, when my children started here, Sean's son Jake was in one of my daughter Neve's year, and they were really good friends.
How has the school changed since your first days as a student?
So what you have to remember is when I first started here in sixth form, it was basically a boys' school, and there were only girls in the sixth form. So there were 10 girls in our year, there were 3 girls in the year above, and they were the only girls in the school. So we used it to our advantage because the boys hated it if we beat them at all in any exams or anything like that. So we did get away with a bit of murder. Not literally murder.
Do you have any favourite or core memories from your time as a pupil?
Do you know what? I loved it all because it was a very different environment for me. I'd been at an all-girls comprehensive school in Bootle, so to come here felt very odd to begin with. And I remember my brother saying, "Oh, do they all play rugger?" Because he thought it was really posh. But obviously it isn't. But everyone was so welcoming, and we had really great fun, and I made lifelong friends here. In fact, last weekend we had friends from school up to stay for the weekend. So.
Did you ever imagine, whilst you were a pupil here, that you would one day return as a teacher and vice principal?
Well, I always knew I wanted to be a maths teacher, and in my primary school and my first secondary school, music was always really important. So I decided to do my A-levels based on the fact I wanted to be a teacher, so I did maths, music and chemistry. Because I knew I wanted to be involved in music when I taught. Now I know I'm not at the moment, but I've always had a choir until I became vice principal. I used to run the choir and things before Mr. Johnson did, certainly the junior one. So I didn't really think about where I would teach when I was training, but when the opportunity arose to teach here, I knew I had to go for it.
Were there any teachers or students at St Mary's influenced you during your time as a pupil at the school?
I liked all of the teachers I had here. I had a guy called Mr. Murgatroyd for chemistry, who always wore Jesus sandals. But he was one of the most organised people I've ever met, and he was really knowledgeable about chemistry and made it also interesting. There was only me doing music, so I was taught by a really nice gentleman called Mr. Steele, but it was quite intense because it was just me and him, and I had to learn so much. Bizarrely for maths, I was taught by Mr. Sage, and I later taught with him, which was fun, but I then became his head of department, so that was very odd. So yeah, but I loved it all.
I thought you said Mr. Murder then.
No, Mr. Murgatroyd.
What motivated you to come back and teach at St Mary's?
So when the school went co-ed in 1989, so that was when they took girls right the way through, my sister started in year 9, and she came home one night saying that one of the teachers had told her to tell me that there was a job and I should apply. So I was doing teacher training at the time, and I'd had such a great time in the sixth form that I knew I'd really love it as a place to teach. So I was doing teaching practice in Holy Family, in Thornton, at the time, and they had a job too, which they'd asked me to apply for. But then St Mary's interviewed me first, and I've been here ever since.
How did your experience as a pupil differ to your experience as a teacher in the college? Was it strange teaching in the same classrooms where you once sat as a student?
So at first, the strangest thing was calling teachers that had taught me by their first name, and it took me quite a while to get used to that. In fact, I don't think I called Mr. Sage Henry for about a year. And when I started, I was only 22. So I was closer in age to the sixth form than I was to any other teacher. So it took a while to get used to being in the staff room.
Did any lessons from your own school experience influence your teaching style?
I was taught by people who were genuinely interested in me and my progress, and I've tried to do that in my career. I think it's important to be firm and fair with children because children like boundaries and they like consistency, so I've always tried to do that.
What are some of your most memorable moments from your time as a teacher?
There are actually too many to mention, but my fondest memories have been on school trips. I've taken sixth formers to Lourdes 12 times, so Lourdes is a place of pilgrimage in France, and they've been very emotional trips. When I've seen our pupils at their very best helping disabled youngsters have a great time. And more recently I've been on 3 rugby tours and 4 ski trips, and I've loved them all too. So I really enjoy spending time with young people because they're just so funny.
What is your favourite thing about teaching at St Mary's?
The children, every day is different. I know it sounds cringy, but it really is like my extended family. I met my husband here, and all my children have been here, so it's such a big part of our lives.
What inspired you to move into school leadership at St Mary's?
I was given advice by a lady called Miss Hamilton, who was at my other school before I came here, that if I was to stay in a school, she knew I wanted to be a teacher, and if she said if I was to stay in a school for a long time, then make sure my job changed, which I have, and I think it's important not to become stale and bored. So I've always looked for new challenges, and being on the leadership team has given me that.
Which achievements are you most proud of during your time in leadership?
I'm proud that this is a school where pupils are cherished and heard. I think you're well looked after, but you're also able to be yourselves, and I hope that I've played a part in molding that kind of culture.
What do you think makes St Mary's so special?
I think it's a place of safety, of security, of fun, of excellence, and lots of opportunity. I think it's a place where pupils are celebrated, and people are accepted with all of their quirks, me included. And I love the fact that I think the relationship between the pupils and the staff is very special, and pupils are allowed to be their authentic selves.
What made you want to stay at St Mary's for so long?
I think it's because I've always loved my job. I did apply for a job once in a school in Mughal, but somebody else picked me to the post, and I'm really glad they did, because I would rather stay here. I've worked with some great people, and again, the children, and then I think once my own 3 children came to the senior school from the prep, it just made sense for me to stay as well.
In your opinion, how have the students changed over the decades?
I'm not sure that fundamentally they have changed. What I would say is that I think you have more challenges now, particularly around social media. So what's normal, I think, has changed, and it'll be interesting to see how things progress over the coming years, particularly with the announcement yesterday that under 16s are going to be banned from social media. So
Charles not going to coach.
Charles is not happy.
What traditions or values do you hope that the school will always preserve?
Well, I love our motto, we show our faith by the way we live, love and learn, and I hope that is still at the core. I hope that pupils are treated fairly and with love, and I hope that never changes.
Can you tell us a story that captures the spirit of the school community?
Gosh, this was a difficult one to think about because there are so many, but I thought of a very recent one. So at the beginning of May, when the Year 11 were going on exam leave, one of the quieter boys, who sits on his own in the dining room eating his lunch, had his shirt on, you know, that they were signing, over his other one, but he was on his own, and it looked a bit sad. So a group of the lads came in, and when I pointed him out to them, they went straight over to him, signed his shirt, and then asked if he wanted to go outside with them. Now he did say no, but that's fine. And that to me captured the essence of this place, that nobody's kind of left on their own.
Having experienced the school from 3 perspectives as a student, a teacher and a reader, which role taught you the most?
Definitely being a leader. I think the weight of responsibility is sometimes difficult, but being a student and a teacher here has given me the resilience I think I need to be good as a leader.
What has been the most rewarding part of your career?
Seeing the pupils grow in confidence and then achieve, and knowing that I've played a part in that. And I very often get, I might be out shopping or out for a drink or something, and I'm always stopped by people. It's Mrs. Thomas, do you remember when? And I think that's the bit I love the most.
Is there a particular student, colleague or moment that you'll never forget?
There are lots. But one student I'll never forget is a girl called Alex. And she had a really difficult home life, and she was in my form in year 11. And I helped her the best I could. And I've now met her as an adult with her own children, and I think I made a difference, as she told me I did, so that's quite nice.
What advice would you give to new teachers starting their careers?
Give it your all, and the rewards will be many, I think. That's what I've tried to do.
What has life at St Mary's taught you?
It's difficult to say, as I've done all of my working life here. I've never worked anywhere else, so I've nothing to compare to, but I can honestly say that my 36 years here I've been happy, and I would do the same again in a heartbeat.
And finally, moving on to your time after St Mary's, what will you miss most about your school life?
Pupils. I think working with children keeps you young, and I'll miss the endless fun that they provide.
What made you decide to retire now?
Well, both my husband and I made the decision to retire, so he retired a month ago, and we thought that we would still have the energy and good health, hopefully, touch wood, so that we can have new adventures and travel.
What are you looking forward to in retirement?
Being able to go on holiday whenever I like and not having to go on the school holidays.
Isn't it most expensive in the school holidays?
Absolutely, yes.
A few fun questions to lighten the mood and distract us from your departure.
What school rule would your younger self have found hardest to follow?
I'm afraid I was one of those good girls who found it really hard to break a rule. But as I've got older, I wish I was more of a rule breaker, but I just don't think I am.
If you could relive one day from your career, which would it be?
I'm not sure I'd do anything differently. Even when you make mistakes, I think you learn from them. And I've always tried to do my best. I know sometimes I've made mistakes, but hey ho.
What is the funniest thing that ever happened during your time at the school?
There are numerous things, but there is one story which I thought might be appropriate. So before I was vice principal, I was in charge of pastoral care, and I was called out of maths class one day to another maths set to find the front of the classroom was littered with exotic fruit, which members of the class had bowled along the floor. And what had happened was a boy from my class had asked to go to the loo, but he'd taken his bag with him, and I thought that's really odd. And they'd organised it so that when he walked past the classroom, he threw a piece of fruit in, at which point everybody else threw the fruit to the front. So it was all pre-planned. The teacher that it happened to was absolutely fuming, but it was actually really funny. So I had to pretend to be annoyed and went in and shouted at them all, and then I ended up putting 6 of them on detention. But I found a book in the library about fruit, so I made them copy out fun facts about fruit in the detention, and we called it Fruitgate.
What is the one thing students today might be surprised to learn about the school in your day?
Wow, this is absolutely crackers. There was a smoking room for 6th formers. So where the girls' toilets are now, used to be a room where the 6th formers were allowed to go and smoke. It is terrible, isn't it? Now, I've never smoked a cigarette in my life, and coming here, I found this really strange. But then, thank goodness, more girls arrived, and they needed the space for the girls' toilets, so the smoking room was no more. Mm.
If you could describe your journey at the school in 3 words, what would they be?
Life-changing, we're going to say is one word. Fulfilling and happy.
If you could speak to your younger self on their first day as a pupil here, what would you say?
Oh my word, I'd say there's absolutely nothing to worry about because you're in it for the long haul.
Thank you so much for your time, Mrs. Thomas. We hope you enjoyed the interview and please enjoy your final weeks at the college. Please keep in touch with us.
I certainly will, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it, girls, so thank you very much.
Bye.